information, proper documentation, so that we don't face the kind of messes we have now in Port Hope and Chalk River, where they're spending billions of dollars cleaning up improperly buried nuclear waste from the past. You know that most people don't realize perhaps that $7 billion of taxpayers' money is being spent to clean up improperly buried waste at Chalk River, and another $1.8 billion is being spent to digging up and retrieving improperly handled radioactive waste from Port Hope. We don't want that here. We want to have a proper management scheme that is going to work for future generations.
You said that if it's a dump, then the DGR or the panel cannot approve it outright. Do you believe it is?
Well, yes, it is a dump. There's no doubt about it. They want to convert the repository. When we talk about a repository, like the Library of Congress has a book repository. A repository is not abandoned. It is maintained, it is looked after, it is treasured, and you have people who keep it in very good shape. That's fine, a repository. A dump is something different, and the moment that they seal this thing up, it's no longer a repository. They've turned it into a dump. And we believe that that's not what the panel should be approving. We believe that the scientific evidence is unable to predict so far into the future. The Great Lakes were not even here 10,000 years ago. And the half-life of plutonium is 24,000 years. The pyramids of Egypt are only 5,000 years old. These scientists, I'm afraid, and I'm a scientist myself, but we have become a little bit arrogant in thinking that we can predict the future over such timescales. When we visited the various planets in our solar system, every time we were totally surprised. Our predictions were all wrong. And I think that when we predict about the future, 10,000, 20,000, a million years from now, we're whistling in the wind. And although I'm a mathematician and I'm very respectful of the powers of mathematics, I know that mathematical models are just another language. It's another way of describing what we imagine to happen. If anybody at Fukushima Daiichi in Japan had been able to predict the kind of problems they're facing right now, with 1,000 tanks of contaminated water and growing every day, I think that you shake your head in disbelief and say nobody could have predicted this.
So I guess we've come full circle. The only thing left to do, at least at this stage, is the above-ground storage that we have now.
I think the above-ground storage is, even according to OPG, is working fine and could be continued indefinitely into the future with proper care. They say that themselves, and I think, well, if that's the only motivation for building a deep geological repository, is so that you can abandon it, basically tiptoe away and say, good luck future generations, but don't expect any help from us if this thing leaks. I think that's irresponsible. And we already have had a situation in the States where one of the most powerful nations on Earth, with enormous funding, has tried 8 times to locate a successful deep geological repository for radioactive waste, and they failed all 8 times. The most recent failure being the Yucca Mountain project, where they spent about $10 billion in research money, and now they've abandoned that. They've abandoned not the waste, they've abandoned the project. So this is why I'm cautioning the panel. I believe that the panel is being put in a very compromised position. They're being presented with evidence, and they're doing a very good job in listening to this evidence and weighing this evidence, but none of this evidence is convincing in terms of the time periods that we're talking about. So what they can say is, look, if Ontario Power Generation feels that underground storage is a safer way than above-ground storage, fine. But we are not going to give our approval to the idea of abandoning it. After you put it down there and stored it for a few decades, then you can initiate a proceeding for a new project. And that new project would be the question of abandonment. And I don't believe that unless there's major progress made in the meantime, I don't think that a future panel should approve it either. Because ultimately, you can't solve a problem by just pointing to all the efforts that have been made to solve it.
Good.